Good evening, everyone. We thank you for tuning into our American Democracy podcast today. I'm your host, Tamisha Dunford, along with my classmates and excellent panelists, Terrell Jackson and Natalia Elizade. And we are here representing the fall class session of American Democracy as students at Vanguard University. Join us as we explore the heroic life of Jimmy Lai and his transformation from a life of poverty to one of opportunity as an advocate and activist of Hong Kong. Today, we will delve into the changes in China's political structure that led to some of the largest rallies and protests in a fight for freedom of Hong Kongers. This inspired Lai to become a pro democracy activist on behalf of the freedoms he received as a citizen of Hong Kong as well. Jimmy Lai stood with integrity and dignity, upholding the truth of his spirituality, supporting his wife and his staff of Apple Daily, which was his media platform. Even when met with violence from the government, Lai's tenacity continues to prevail as he stood to choose, as he chose to stand for what was right: freedom, liberty, and equality for Hong Kong citizens. We invite you to engage and share your thoughts and prayers in the chat for Hong Kong and Jimmy Lai. He was and is a symbol of resistance. And as we discuss and highlight the fight against oppression for the people of Hong Kong, let us remember to hope for Lai's release and the restoration of his reputation and liberation. Join us as we speak about Hong Kongers and their fight for freedom. Terrell, what struck you most about Jimmy Lai's life and his personal sacrifices for democracy?
Um, Great question, T. What struck me most was his willingness to lay everything on the line. Most people work their entire lives to protect their wealth, their status, and even their personal freedoms. Jimmy Lai had all of that, and yet when it came down to kind of choosing between safety and standing up for what he believed in, he was willing to lose it all. And that kind of sacrifice is rare in today's world, especially among business leaders. And it just shows us the kind of conviction that Jimmy had meant more than comfort. Excuse me. Another thing that stood out to me was that he had every opportunity to leave Hong Kong when things really got dangerous. He could have lived anywhere in the world and enjoyed the blessings of his fortune, but instead he chose to stay. And that to me that decision says a lot about Jimmy's character. I think he valued people, and his principles more than he did his personal pleasure. So I just was really inspired by Jimmy and a lot of the things, especially his character. So Jimmy, to me, um, uh, didn't just do a lot of talking. It really showed up in just a principled way that he lived his life.
How about you?
Yeah, I think that I know we had kind of talked about the fact that we had never even heard of Jimmy before and learning about his story, I couldn't help but parallel to people like Nelson Mandela and Martin Luther King Jr. and just as activists that stood so strongly for human rights, but they did it with so much peace. And as we talk about, the different questions we're going to go through, I think that's very telling of these parallels and the type of people that these men were. So I think that really stood out, and just the childhood that he had. Um, and having money and then losing it and then becoming this businessman and being unlike other business leaders that was not silenced because of the money and because of the platform. Instead, he used it to stand up for society that really, you know, um, sets him apart from everyone else. So that was very, just very inspiring to learn that about him.
And from his platform that he used, um, and showing the impact that it had upon the people, how did the film show to us the weight of the conflict between democracy and authoritarian authority?
Yeah, I think that it was very obvious that the government felt threatened and just the in terms of press, it was very censored about what was released to the public, only because once a public finds out how people are being mistreated and what's really happening behind closed doors, that's when people are able to get together and fight against these things. And so obviously Jimmy knew that, and that's why he went about it the way that he did, but also um, authorities definitely felt threatened by that. And even though there was peaceful protests that Jimmy led and that the people actually, went along with, they still were very much against that. So I think that showed a lot about how the government responded to their acts when it was nothing threatening and nothing wrong with how they were going about it. But they felt threatened anyways.
So, how do you all feel that faith and principles influence Jimmy Lai's judgments and his resilience? Terrell?
Well, the thing that you were asking about, um, that authoritarian authority. The film, in my opinion, I'm sorry, made it clear that that one country, two system promise after 1997 was really breaking down. What was supposed to protect the Hong Kong people for 50 years quickly kind of eroded. Um, and I think the people felt betrayed by the loss of their rights that they had been guaranteed in that promise. Another thing, I think, with as Natalia said, with the restrictions of that free speech, the press, and even public gathering, the government kind of tightened its grip. They started passing laws that kind of criminalized, dissenting opinions, and it forced a lot of the citizens of Hong Kong into silence. That showed to me how quickly our freedoms can disappear when you have unchecked power. Um, so just thinking about that, the bigger message to me was that democracy is really, really fragile. I've kind of been inspired over here in America just to kind of get more vocal and involved in politics, because democracy is fragile anywhere, not just in Hong Kong. So it reminds us that people, unless people actively protect their freedoms, they can be taken away by those who are in power.
Very good. How did Jimmy's platform, Apple Daily, become a symbol of resistance? Natalia?
Yeah, I think I feel like reading about the Apple Daily newspaper made me think a lot about our society and our even generation, or whether that's just here. But I think it is definitely worldwide. Social media, our version of social media is, this film's version of Apple Daily. It was the way that it was free press, it was available to the public. Everyone is watching it, and obviously the democracy feels threatened by it, and that was a big part of that. It was a way, like I mentioned earlier, just a way for people to be more knowledgeable, and knowledge is power. And so as they were finding out, it was easier for these movements to happen. And I think just that comparison was very clear. And the message was trying to be sent to the public, and it gave them a voice and it gave them a platform. And Jimmy used it as much as he could, despite the resistance that was obviously happening, because they felt, again, threatened. So that was a lot about what the Apple Daily really did for them.
And Terrell, how about you?
For me, T, I think Apple Daily was a symbol of resistance in the fact that it served as just an antagonist, kind of like a watchdog and a voice for the people. It wasn't just a business. It kind of was a platform for the citizens to kind of know the truth. I used to look at, watchdogs as being, oh, here they go again. But, that's just an important element, for people to have someone that's watching the powers that's be. Not only that, but, that paper dared, it literally dared to publish that pro-democracy content, even when they was threatened. They made Apple Daily the rallying point, and I think that people knew that Apple Daily was with them, and it was not against them. And so, I just think it was a great source of resilience to the people that Apple Daily provided, that inspiration to the people.
Lai never gave up his wealth and security, which is something most business owners would never do. So, what do you think was the influence that made Jimmy Lai different? Made him different?
For me, most people build their businesses to kind of protect themselves and their families. But Jimmy kind of saw his company as a platform for others. That's what was so inspiring to me about him. He wanted to use his resources to kind of, amplify the voices of the people. So, his beliefs and his ethics, in my opinion, gave him a larger purpose beyond just making money. I think Jimmy saw freedom and justice as treasures that were worth more than just financial security. So Jimmy was a great inspiration, man. I think because he didn't ask, what do I gain? But instead, he said, what will others lose if I stay silent? And, I think those are rare people, to be able to shift your perspective so much so that you make a difference in the lives of so many other people.
Yeah.
Very good. Natalia, what's your
Yeah,
thoughts on?
I think that Jimmy giving up his wealth and security is definitely something that most businessmen wouldn't do. And I think it's in his character and maybe the way he was raised, but I think his faith did have a lot to do with that. I think it was very telling and obvious, and especially with the film bringing it up, wasn't just for no reason. I think that as Christians, especially, and as believers in Christ, we do think that that does set apart people. Obviously, we're not all going to be working for the church. We're going to be businessmen and we're going to be doing other things in the world, and we have to be that light that represents, and that's different. And I think that's probably, a big thing that set Jimmy apart was that even though he was a businessman and, you know, all of these things, I think that has a lot to do with him being set apart in his morals, and that the success of his businesses had nothing to do with wanting money and wanting power, but he was very well aware of the money and power that he had in his hands, and he used it for good and for the people. And I think that was very telling, and really set him apart as a person.
Yeah, it definitely did. So he lied, sacrificed his wealth and security. He put it on the line. Um, and that separated him from other successful businessmen, even at being an advocate and using his resources and what he had to do that. So why does their democratic society, what do you think made that society feel so threatened by his platform and that made them threaten the freedom of speech through lying his newspaper?
T, I think Apple Daily gave people hope. And as we know, hope is a dangerous thing to those who want to keep people silent. Once people start to believe change is possible, they can no longer be controlled so easily. And I think that the government saw Jimmy as a threat because he couldn't be bribed, and neither could he be intimidated. And I think that kind of courage is hard to silence, and it's very intimidating, I think, to power. Another thing, when people are informed, they begin to demand accountability. And I think knowledge empowers people, and authoritative systems don't want informed citizens. I think they want obedience. Jimmy threw a monkey wrench in that psychology.
Yeah, I think that free speech leads to critical thinking. I think that, things like the daily newspaper and everything that Jimmy was doing, that allowed people to really start to question what democracy they were in, what society they were in, who their leaders were. They started asking those questions, and Jimmy was a huge part of that. So I think that obviously that made them feel very threatened and wanted, their version of free speech was, the media and the press and getting together. And what that did was that created less control of the narrative for them. So I think that's what definitely threatened, is that they could quickly see that they were losing control of this picture that they were trying to paint for the people in the society. And obviously that makes people want to make a difference and to speak up. And obviously they didn't like that.
Well spoken, both of you. And in closing, with so much inequality present in our world today, this story has truly caught the eye of many. And as we strive to deepen our awareness and understanding of these events unfolding in our world today, this story, I'm sure, reminds us as Americans of our tumultuous past and our continuous fight against controversial issues that we have had and we continue to fight, a democracy that upholds its values to sustain society and maintain citizen policies, equality, freedom, justice, pluralism, social and worship tolerance, respect, and participation. I'd like to first thank my panelists, Terrell and Natalia, for their insights and the discussion on Jimmy Lai and his boldness in standing up for Hong Kong society. One country, two systems, with eroding promises. Peaceful protests turned into violent raids. And one man who stood on the convictions of his faith and sacrificed everything to end up incarcerated. There were some people entangled in a web of conspiracy. Despite his unwavering commitment to his cause, Jimmy Lai faces multiple prosecutions, including alleged sedition and alleged conspiracy to collude with foreign forces under the controversial law of the People's Republic of China on safeguarding national security in the Hong Kong and Special Administrative Region. On August the 28th, 2025, Jimmy Lai's case under NSL concluded and a verdict is awaited. If convicted, Lai could face up to life imprisonment, highlighting the ongoing legal challenges he faces. Lai has pleaded not guilty, and we are hoping for a just verdict and a release of Jimmy Lai. Thank you all for tuning in with us as we send our prayers and our hope for the sustenance of citizens of Hong Kong. According to Forbes magazine last year, ruled that Jimmy Lai is unlawfully, arbitrarily detained and calling for his immediate release. So as we all come together as being informed, let us hope for the best, pray for the best, and keep fighting for with integrity for freedom, justice, and equality for all. Thank you all. Have a good night.